Hello and welcome to ThePrint. I'm Snehesh Alex Philip. A lot is happening in Pakistan, especially when it comes to the issue of Balochistan. Over the last 24 hours, the Balochistan Liberation Army cadres have gone ahead and hijacked a passenger train of Pakistan and now have in custody over 200 Pakistani security personnel, which includes those from the army, the paramilitary forces, as well as from the intelligence. Now, to understand how significant this is and to understand where this is going to lead to, I have with me senior fellow at the ORF, Sushant Sareen. Welcome to ThePrint, Sushant.
Thanks, Sneh.
The Baloch fighters have increased their series of attacks over the last few months, and this happens to be the biggest attack launched by them in the recent past or over a fair amount of time. How significant is this?
I think this is the latest in a series of very spectacular and audacious attacks that the Baloch militants have carried out against the Pakistani state. In fact, last year, on August 26th, they had carried out a large scale coordinated attack across the length and breadth of Balochistan. And that came as a major shock. So there have been a series of such attacks. But of course, in this particular attack, the fact that they made something like 200 odd Pakistani security force personnel hostage, I think is a very significant development. Simply because if they were to start executing some of those guys, the Pakistan army would have a lot of egg on its face, especially because, the spokespeople of the Pakistan army on Indian television channels keep claiming that Pakistan army doesn't surrender. Pakistan army is world's number one army, etc., etc. And clearly the cover that had was being put on the situation in Balochistan, that all is well, I think that cover has got blown up, and very clearly the situation in not just Balochistan but even in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is spiraling out of control, with senior political leaders with an ear to the ground saying that, look, the state has lost control over large swaths of territory, not just in Balochistan, but also in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So this attack is certainly going to provoke the Pakistan army to probably launch large-scale operations, and it clearly proves that that boast of Mohsin Naqvi, their PCB chairman, who also doubles up as interior minister, we don't know whether he's more into PCB or interior ministry, but that clown had gone on to say that, I can settle the Baloch thing with just an SHO. Now, I don't know if a couple of corps commanders are also going to be enough to settle this problem. So, quite clearly, the Punjabis in Pakistan with, that typical Punjabi Badak, uh, have been doing what they've been doing, but now there's a massive pushback coming from the Baloch.
No doubt about it. And, you mentioned that the Pakistani military will use this to launch another set of operations in Balochistan. Now, over the years, Balochistan has been identified by the bestiality or the brutality of the Pakistani military, and especially of the military intelligence. Right, thousands of people have disappeared overnight. They are found dumped on the streets months later, at times 2 to 3 years later, fully tortured bodies. Now, you said that Pakistan is going to use this as an excuse to launch probably a more brutal operations. But for our viewers, what exactly is the Balochistan issue? Who are these BLA people? Who are these Baloch fighters? And what are they fighting for? And where does China come into this equation?
So, what they're fighting for is independence from Pakistan, from the yoke of Pakistan, or what they call Punjabi colonialism, because Punjab dominated or Punjab occupied Pakistan has basically grabbed all the resources, has sucked it dry, and treated, for example, the Baloch resources have been used for the development of Punjab and other parts of Pakistan, not for Balochistan. So what they want is to shake off the yoke of Pakistan and of Punjab. That is simple. Secondly, what they have against the Chinese is that the Chinese came bearing a lot of gifts, but frankly, none of those gifts really did anything for the Baloch. In fact, the Baloch see the Chinese as masters of their colonial masters. So they think that the exploitation which will be carried out in Balochistan by the Chinese who are trying to invest money in various projects is actually going to lead to further marginalization of the Baloch in their own lands. So, and they think that the Chinese coming in, the Chinese will prop up the Pakistani state. So it's in their interest to ensure that the Chinese do not come into Balochistan and do not prop up the Pakistani state. So very clearly, the Chinese are seen as an enemy. Uh, Now, why the Baloch have reached such a pass? Look, Balochistan has been in ferment right from 1948 when it was forcibly annexed by Pakistan, or it was forcibly made to accede to Pakistan. But I think this latest round of insurgency has been continuing now for over 20 years now, almost 25 years now. And it's ebbed and flowed. But what has happened is that over the years, the composition of the militancy has changed. Earlier, it used to be located in a few districts. It was limited to few tribal groups. The Pakistani state would, get the other tribals, use the tribal rivalries to break an insurgency, and continue to establish their control over Balochistan. Bribe people, bludgeon them into shape, all sorts of uh, things the Pakistanis did to ensure their control over Balochistan. Now, what has happened is that this transcends tribal rivalries. So, most of these groups now go beyond one or two tribes. It's like various people are joining, regardless of tribal affiliations, are joining various groups. That's a major change which has come. Number two, the tribal sardars do not lead the insurgency anymore. It's the people on the ground who are fighting uh, inside Balochistan or just from across the borders are actually leading these groups. So it's no longer affiliated to tribal sardars. This is more of a middle class movement which has started. Number three, these are not uneducated people who have been brainwashed. These are very highly educated people. For example, Dr. Allah Nazar Baloch of the BLF is a gold medalist doctor. You have other people who are engineers, doctors, uh, double MAs, PhDs, all kinds of things. Number four, a large number of women have joined them. In a society as conservative and orthodox as Balochistan, a large number of women have joined in. And at least insofar as the political movement is concerned, women are now occupying leadership roles, including
Absolutely.
somebody like Dr. Maharang Baloch. So that's a significant change that has come in this movement. So, and then in terms of geographical spread, there is no district in Balochistan where these guys do not operate anymore. They've increased their capabilities, they've increased their capacities, their organizational skills have increased, their training is superb. They've been able to launch the kind of attacks that nobody imagined them to be able to do. Their attacks are pretty professional. So every which way you see, the Baloch insurgency has gone to the next level, and that clearly is something which should cause serious concern to the Pakistani state.
True, absolutely true. You mentioned about the kind of training that these Baloch fighters have got, and and it's spectacular the kind of ambitious, that they're holding. It's very military precision style operation. Even this train hijacking video that they've just released earlier today shows them it's a very clinical operation that they've undertaken. Where are they getting the training from? Is there is there a connection between the Baloch and the Taliban as Pakistan claims it to be?
Look, there are some reports that there is a connection between the Baloch and the Taliban. Now, I wouldn't entirely rule it out, but look, let's be clear about a couple of things. The Baloch and the Taliban are diametrically opposite ideologically. The
Yes,
Taliban is an out and out Islamist group. The Baloch is an out and out nationalist group. So there is very little, in common between them. The only thing common between them is a common enemy, which is the Pakistani state or the Punjabi state. That is the common element between the two. So it's your enemy's enemy is your friend kind of a deal. Secondly, I think it's very clear that the fact that the Baloch operate uh, from inside, apart from operating from inside Balochistan, because there's a groundswell of opinion which backs these people. I don't think there's anybody left in Balochistan who speaks up for the Baloch state. Incidentally, even even traditional leaders, highly respected leaders, have become redundant in Balochistan. In fact, they've openly said, people like Dr. Abdul Malik Baloch, people like Akhtar Mengal, other former chief ministers and ministers have openly said that we don't count for anything in politics of Balochistan anymore. The shots are called by either the militants or people like Dr. Maharang Baloch. So, so that massive transition has taken place. So now, as far as the Taliban are concerned, the fact that these guys operate not just from inside Balochistan, but also from Iran and Afghanistan. And if they're operating from Afghanistan, it means that at least somebody is turning a blind eye to their presence in Afghanistan, or their using or their bases in Afghanistan to for rest, recuperation, whatever you want to call it. Now that seems to be the circumstantial evidence, but I don't think there is anything to suggest that there is some kind of alliance between the two. What might be happening is that, for example, if the Baloch were to go into areas dominated by the TTP characters in north of Balochistan, in the Pashtun belt of Balochistan, uh, the Pashtuns or the TTP guys will not interfere in their operations. Similarly, might even assist them. Similarly, if the TTP guys were to carry out some operations, the Baloch would not take umbrage at it, that they're trying to step on Baloch toes. So I think that kind of an accommodation would certainly be happening. There is
Okay.
no evidence of it so far, but I think circumstantial evidence suggests that there is some kind of an understanding between them.
Perfect. And here I'll be the devil's advocate. When it comes to Balochistan issue, Pakistan has been putting on this preposterous idea that it is India which is, funding, arming, training the so-called Baloch fighters. How would you respond to that?
This is standard Pakistani nonsense, because they see the ghost of India behind everything which happens in Pakistan. Now, the point is, for 20 years, they continued to say TTP was an Indian sponsored group. And the
Yeah,
day the Taliban come into power, all our problems are going to be sorted out. Did, did that happen? Okay,
they can
TTP
have
was
us
supposed
know.
to be an Indian group. Taliban was supposed to be the good guys, the favorites of Pakistan. But what happened when the Taliban took power? So the the Punjabi Muslim mind is so obtuse, it's so dumb and so obtuse that it sees a Hindu conspiracy or an Indian conspiracy behind everything. Everything is a Ra conspiracy, right? So the problem with these characters is that they don't want to recognize their own faults. They don't want to recognize their own fault lines. They don't want to admit the mistakes they have been making in bludgeoning people, treating them like something that the cat has brought in, uh, disparaging the smaller nationalities in Pakistan. The fact that the Pakistan army has left no room for dissent. You make a tweet, you can now be hauled up and you can be put in prison. You fight an election, any number of people can vote for you, but your election result will be decided by the army. Is this democracy? Is this how you run a country? So the mistakes which they have made, that they will not recognize, they will keep pointing a finger at India. So one was what I said, the Taliban example, the TTP example. The second thing is that the India is backing and every time, they're so dumb, these Pakistani. Every time you would talk to them, but we have Kulbhushan Jadhav, right? Bloody idiots they are. Yeah? What is Kulbhushan Jadhav? There are serious questions about what Kulbhushan Jadhav is all about, where he was captured, etc., etc. But I don't want to get into that debate because
Yeah, that's a separate issue altogether for a debate.
is the thing is that uh, the fact that the Baloch insurgency has picked up after the Taliban captured Kabul. You can very clearly see the trajectory of militancy in Balochistan after 2021, after the fall of Kabul to the Taliban. it's very apparent, how the intensity of attacks in Balochistan have increased, as also in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The other thing is that India does not have a contiguous border with Balochistan, right? Uh, and unless it's the Pakistani case that Indians are operating through Iran and through Afghanistan, then it means that the Taliban are allowing the Indians to operate. But
Yeah.
India has got 12 people in our technical mission out there. Okay, do you think we can operate from Iran unless the Iranians want to do something? So why blame India? Why not blame Iran? Because then they are brother Muslim country. That nonsense. So I the problem with the Punjabi Muslim mind in Pakistan is that it is very low IQ, and they simply do not want to admit reality even when it's staring them in the face. So they can keep blaming India, they can keep chasing the ghost of India, but I don't think it helps them solve the problem because they're chasing a ghost. They're not going to be able to address the problem.
True. General, Asim Munir, he finds himself in a spot right now. You have a situation in KPK which is literally out of his control, right? It's beyond the depth of the Pakistan army to really understand how to go about with it. And then you have some issues in Balochistan, then the politics in Pakistan. Where do you see the Pakistan army going from here? Do you see the Pakistan army taking a more center stage role, and going really, full hogs as far as the security is concerned?
Look, they already occupy the center stage role. I don't think anybody takes the so-called civilian government in Pakistan seriously.
Yeah,
Shahbaz Sharif is a puppet, right? He is a rubber stamp. I don't think even he has any notions about being the prime minister of Pakistan. He's like PS to PM, kind of a deal, or PS to COAS in the local rank of prime minister.
yeah,
That is Shahbaz Sharif's aukat. So the point is that the army is still center stage. Now, the choice before the army is uh, to take power directly and then impose some kind of martial law to carry out massive operations throughout Pakistan to cleanse it. Now, that will only precipitate the crisis. I think what the army really needs to do is go back into the barracks and stop interfering in the political processes of Pakistan. Had they not interfered in the political process in Pakistan, a lot of the problems in Balochistan would have been sorted out. So, for example, when Akbar Bukti was assassinated by the Pakistan army in 2006, the politicians like Shujat Hussain had actually gone and tried to settle the matters. And
yeah,
then the Pakistan army, with the typical Punjabi bluster, went about, carrying out their operations. And since then, there's been no turning back. So the point is that ideally the Pakistan army should step back, should not interfere, should let the civilians call the shots. But the civilians uh, are simply not confident in taking charge themselves or in asking the army to do what the army needs to do. So you have a systemic and a structural problem now in Pakistan, where the Pakistan army, in the false notion that it will help to rescue the state, will continue to undermine the state and become the state. It's already become the state, but it will continue to undermine the entire structure of the state, and things are only going to deteriorate. I don't see how they're going to be able to fix it. Secondly, Snesh, look, armies are trained to do certain things. Okay. Now, you can't expect a colonel or a brigadier to understand modern economics or how investment policies work. But Pakistan army thinks it is the repository of all the wisdom and it can do this, right? It's like the counterpart of the IAS in Pakistan. So they will want to grab everything and do everything on their own. And clearly they make a hash of everything. So they will want to take control of the economy. They will want to take control of foreign policy. They will want to take control of every damn thing in Pakistan. Water distribution, everything, fertilizer, animal husbandry, everything army can do.
yeah,
Now, if that is the attitude you have, then you clearly you are destroying the state, you are eating up the vitals of the state and ruining it. So I don't see that equation changing in Pakistan. In fact, I think the army doubling down, which will only continue to precipitate matters. And finally, the choice before the army is that, look, the army has already been launching operations in Balochistan for the last 20 years. right? You mentioned the kind of brutalities they've been visiting upon the people. They've been violating all the norms of civilized behavior by entering into houses, raping women. They've been insulting women, beating up children, beating up old people, uh, you know, abducting young people, uh, sometimes disappearing them for life, sometimes throwing their bodies, mutilated bodies, all kinds of horrific things they have done. Now, this has already been going on. Now, what more can they do? The only thing they can do is now carry out steamroller operations, right? Send in the military machine to just, bulldoze everything.
Yeah.
Will that help? Will that help? And I think last but not the least, the Pakistan army should stop lying. They continue to spread these stories through their mouthpieces, that today we've killed 20 terrorists, today we have killed 30 terrorists, right? If you start adding up the numbers of terrorists they claim to have killed, the Balochistan population would have already gone. They would have completely eliminated the Balochistan population. And so would they have eliminated the TTP guys. So they should
Absolutely.
to their people, and they should smell the coffee. They should go back into their barracks. But I don't think that's going to happen. So I think we'll see a worsening of the situation as we go forward.
Well, in an ideal world, as you said, the Pakistan army would smell the coffee and go back to the barracks, but that is not something that you see happening. That is not something that I see happening. But only time will tell how this is going to spin out as far as Balochistan is concerned. As Sushant was mentioning, that this fight for independence has been going for long, and the spectacular development here, besides of course the attack and other things that have taken place, is that the women in Balochistan play a very dominant role in this whole strive for their independence and for their cause. But thank you so much, Shishant, for speaking to the print and giving our viewers an insider view, a much broader view of what is really happening in Pakistan, especially in Balochistan, and the ramifications that it will have on Pakistan itself and also on the future of Balochistan. Thank you so much, Ishan.
Thanks. Bye.